Haraz is an Eagle Scout, a member of the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, a lifetime member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, a member of the Military Officer Association of America, and a member of the American Legion. Please welcome to Buckeye Boys State's Representative Haraz Ghanbari.
Well, good evening, everyone. 250 years we are celebrating the founding of our nation. If I could just get a show of hands, where is Stockner City located? Stockner City, okay, thank you. So before we get started, I need everybody's help for a quick minute. This is the 5th year that I've had the honor of spending time with Buckeye Boys State. And a few years ago, my good friend Joe Stockner, who's in his 90s, started coming down here with me. And we made it a yearly tradition. When I called Mr. Stockner this week and I said, hey, sir, would you like to go down to Boys State, which he had dedicated 4+ decades serving down with Boys State. He shared with me that he had a couple medical issues come up. And so he's at home recovering from some minor surgery. So I called Joe beforehand to make sure he knew how to FaceTime. So I want to FaceTime Mr. Stockner real quick, let him know where we are. And then once it gets on the screen, if you guys could all say hello or stand up, and we can really put the girls at BGSU, we can really chime it up a little more than they did when you asked them to. So let me just try to give Mr. Stockner a call here. He really wanted to be here with you guys tonight. And hey, Joe. Hey. I'm at Boys State, and I got the whole crowd here, and they just wanted to say hi. I think Joe might want to say something back real quick. Joe, they couldn't hear you. They were cheering so loud. So go ahead. You're on the speakerphone. Go ahead, Joe.
But it doesn't happen to be the Stockner City, is it? Yeah. I knew they'd be a
Hey, Joe, heal up, and we're going to be praying for a speedy recovery for you. But all the guys and the family members, we just want to take a moment to say hi. And we really wish you were with us tonight. So thanks again for taking the FaceTime call.
I would really wish I was there also. I really hated to miss it, but I'm anguishing about it, but I know I can't be there tonight. Maybe next year, though, these guys won't be there. But anyway, fellas, have a good senior year.
Thanks, Mr. Stockner. We'll see you soon. See you, Joe. I tell you what, there's nothing more invigorating to be able to bridge the generational divide between my generation of servicemen and women and those that have come before us. When I walked into the room tonight, I also took note of this single empty chair over here in representation of the more than 83,000 men and women since World War II alone that are classified as our nation's missing in action, and those brave men and women who are prisoners of war. I would challenge all of us to rededicate ourselves to making sure that we as a nation can provide a full and complete accounting to their family members. Several years ago, I was detailed down to a Navy service in the southern part of Wood County for a young man who had gone missing during the war, and through the advances in technology, through DNA and other scientific measures, they were able to identify who that veteran was. And we were able to bring him home to Wood County and provide him a proper and full military funeral, buried right there in the family plot in Wood County. And so that, to me, just reiterates the fact that, as we're gathered here tonight, there is an important mission that is continuing. Probably the most important mission, again, is to provide a full and complete accounting to our brothers and sisters who answered our nation's call to service that are listed as POWs or missing in action. So just take some time to reflect as you leave Boise State about the service and the sacrifice of all those men and women who have come before us that have enabled us an opportunity to answer our nation's call to service. So thank you all for taking just a brief moment to say hello to Mr. Stockner. And I don't know if you guys could all see it on the phone, but he really lit up and his color popped back right away, and he was pretty delighted to see you. So I'm sure I'll be having some conversations with him later in the week. So thank you for that. So this is my 5th consecutive year coming down to Boise State, as I said earlier, and I never am one to really write a speech or figure out exactly verbatim what I'm going to say. I'd rather just share a few words with you from the heart and maybe take a moment to try to tie together some of the things that the speakers before me came to say. So again, 250 years, the semi-quincentennial of our nation's founding, and what an opportune time to be selected to come and attend Buckeye Boise State. This should be an opportunity to reflect on the past, but also have a hopeful eye toward the future. When I first enlisted in the military, I did so because I wanted to serve a cause greater than my own. I now have the 4 flags that draped the caskets of my wife's grandfathers and my grandfathers and step-grandpa on my mom's side, framed and on display in my home office. And those 4 flags, to me, serve as a constant reminder of that service to a cause greater than our own. I would candidly make the argument that no matter what generation our nation's veterans served, it was always about a cause greater than their own. But there was one generation of veterans, and some of them are with us this evening, those that served during the Vietnam War. These men and women that were never given a proper welcome home, that were never told, thank you for your service. They were spat upon, they were looked down upon, they were called names that I will not repeat from this stage. But for those of you that are with us this evening that served during Vietnam, for many of you, you were drafted. It wasn't maybe on your goals to step into service, to wear the cloth of our nation, but you were drafted. And for those that were drafted, whether they were drafted or they went voluntarily, they still all raised their right hand. And they said, here am I, send me. So for those of you that are with us tonight that served during the Vietnam War, thank you for your service and welcome home, and please join me in thanking these men and women as well, everyone. I'll never forget when I was 20 years old and volunteering for my first military deployment. I had deployed to Bosnia. I was in Fort Dix, New Jersey, and I'll tell you guys a quick funny story. We were in an old World War II building, and they were issuing us our cold weather gear. And I looked over and I saw my first sergeant had white socks on. And for those of you that have served in the Army regulation is AR 670-1, the wear and appearance of the military uniform, and there are 2 authorized two authorized collars of socks, OD green or black, and the first sergeant had his white socks on. So kind of joking around, I hit his boots, and the first sergeant said, hey, where are my boots at? I said, well, where are your authorized socks that you're supposed to be wearing? And I kind of was joking around with him a little bit. And that's when he looked at me and said, hey, I need my boots. We just came under attack. And I wasn't sure what the first sergeant meant, but I learned quite quickly as we gathered in a stone-paved parking lot outside the building around a small minivan. Someone had turned the radio on, and we were able to hear the news coverage of the attack on the Pentagon, the plane that went down in Pennsylvania, and obviously the planes that hit the World Trade Center towers. that is the day for my generation that I would say changed our world. It was the generation that came before us that served in World War II with the bombing of Pearl Harbor. That is what changed the lives of those young men and women. And I think for my generation, again, it was 9/11. And that is when our nation came together and people said hello to each other on the streets. They stopped and checked in on their neighbors. And unfortunately, it seems that it oftentimes takes a tragic event to unite our nation. But we have an obligation, I would even argue a moral responsibility, to not have to wait for some tragic event to happen, but we can find reasons every single day, despite sometimes how tough it may be to turn the evening news on, we can still find those little things each and every day that say, I'm proud to be an American. I want to go check in on my neighbors. I want to find ways to serve in my community, in my state, and in my nation. I want to find ways to pay it forward. That year, 25 years ago, it's still with me. And I think what underscored it for me was actually being on that deployment, working as a photographer for the commanding general. We went to a mortuary where they had 5,000 decomposing and unidentified bodies in this morgue. Moms and dads, brothers and sisters, family members, friends, strangers that had been killed because they had a different view than someone else. They didn't agree with them. They were killed because of genocide. And it was a peacekeeping mission that I was part of, and those that came before me and have gone after me were part of. And part of that mission was to help bring closure to those families. And I remember walking into this room with this shiny table and these body parts, these bones scattered throughout that table, as they were trying to piece together what bones went with what body bag. And there was a large coffee-sized table photo book that documented if any of those remains had clothes on, had a ring on, had a jacket on, or a watch on. And a family member would come in and they would glance through that book and maybe they would say something like, this was the watch I bought my husband. This was the wedding ring I gave my wife. And then they would go to that body bag and they would take a DNA sample from that body bag, and a DNA sample provided by that person that had shown up to the morgue. And if those two matched, those remains were given back to that family to go have a proper burial. So I've seen the worst of humanity, but I've also seen the best of humanity. In times when it was still the worst of humanity. And here's what I mean by that. So about 10 years later or so, I was deploying to Afghanistan as a young Navy ensign. And my comrades that were injured, the Afghans that were injured, the Taliban, the enemy that had been injured, if they had a heartbeat, they had a 98% chance of survival, so long as they got to the Kandahar Roll 3 hospital. And why was their chance of survival so great? Because some young man or some young woman raised their hand, enlisted into the military. They were commissioned into the military. They took an oath to protect and serve. They trained diligently. They deployed to a land far away. And it wasn't about partisan politics, about being a Republican or about being a Democrat. It was about being an American. And these nurses and these doctors and these medics and these corpsmen, they poured their heart and their soul into rendering aid for someone that needed it. I'll never forget the Navy captain. His name was Captain McCartan. He came to me towards the end of my deployment to thank me for going over and helping out of the hospital and spending some time with these young, injured Afghan children, doing magic tricks for them, helping to change their dressings, doing what I felt was a little piece that I could offer up. And he came to me and he said, you know, Haraz, these things are going to hit you when you get home. And I didn't understand what he meant in the moment. And I kind of brushed him off, to be honest with you all. But then he shared with me that whenever one of those young Navy corpsmen, doctors, nurses, medics say, hey, Captain, I would like to extend here, he almost never allowed them to extend. And he explained to me because they were so focused in the moment on trying to save a fragile life that they didn't take time to process what they were seeing. And so he shared with me that when you get home, in the quietness of your own mind, the sights and the sounds and the smells that you experienced here in Afghanistan may come back to you. It may transport you back here to Afghanistan. And wouldn't you know it, the captain was right. The things that our military men and women have experienced over the course of a career stay with them forever. Whether it's one enlistment, whether it's two enlistments, whether it's 3 or 4 decades of service. But time and time and time again, it's the young folks from places like Perrysburg, Ohio, from Athens, Ohio, from Columbus, from Oxford, from Middle America, that continually raise their hand and step forward. Now, I'm not challenging all of you to go enlist in the military. It's certainly not my role. But what I will challenge you all is to do this. Find a way to say yes. Find a way to serve. Find a way to pay it forward. Because your nation needs you. If those that came before us in the founding of our nation 250 years ago said, no, I'm not going. No, I'm not going to sacrifice myself for someone else. We would not have the United States of America. We would not have the opportunities to worship freely. We would not have the opportunity to go to school. We would not have the opportunity really to do much of anything. Now, I know that my young son is much younger than all of you. He's 11. And about 2 years ago, I was coming back from a short stint in Bahrain. And for those of you that geographically might want to know where Bahrain is, there you go. He said it's in the Middle East. That's where everything has been happening for the last 100-some days as part of Operation Epic Fury. That's where my Navy command is located, U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet. I'd come back from Bahrain a couple of years ago, and I told my wife, I said, hey, listen, I'm going to retire. Our young son walked in, because, little kids, they all have ears. They listen to everything. Our young son, Jack, walked in and said, Dad, you're going to retire? I said, yeah, buddy, Dad's tired. And he looked at me and he says, Dad, maybe you need to sleep a little more. I said, okay, buddy. Dad's tired. And he looks at me and he goes, well, Dad, maybe you need to work out a little more. I said, okay, fair point, Jack. But what I'm trying to tell you is, Dad's tired. Dad's been in the military for over 20 years. Dad's deployed several times. Dad doesn't want to be away from you and Sissy and Mommy anymore. Dad's done. And my 8-year-old son at the time looked at me and he said this. He said, Dad, if you retire, you're giving up on your country. And he turned around and walked away. Now let that sit with you for a brief moment. If an 8-year-old can comprehend that the freedoms we have were paid for by the men and women that answered our nation's call to service before my generation, I think our nation's in good hands. As I look out amongst the crowd tonight, I know that our nation is in good hands. As I sat here on the stage and watched these young men be introduced that were either currently serving or getting ready to serve, I'm comforted in knowing that our nation is in good hands. So here's what I challenge all of you to do. Number one, find a way to serve. Don't take the investment that your counselors in Boise State and others, your parents, mom, dad, aunt and uncle, grandma, grandpa, brother, sister, your school teachers, most importantly, and others that have invested in you, don't take that investment and keep it for yourself. share it with others, because someone shared it with me, someone's sharing it with you, and it's our obligation to share it with the next generation. That 8-year-old little boy is now 11. And about 3 weeks ago, I took him out to breakfast. I had a cup of coffee. I just kind of set it aside and let him do his talking. He was sitting across the table from U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6, retired Master Chief Ed Byers, one of our nation's Medal of Honor recipients. And to be a fly on the wall in that conversation between a very decorated Navy SEAL Medal of Honor recipient and a young 11-year-old boy that was full of awe, that wanted to know, Mr. Master Chief, he told him, do I need to be an Eagle Scout to become a Navy SEAL? What do I need to do for my workouts? What do I need to eat? How do I need to train? How do I need to prepare myself? Now, Ed didn't need to spend time talking to my son, but Ed knew that this was an opportunity to pay it forward and to invest in the next generation. Because Ed is retired now, and we need to have the next core group of people to come up and fill those boots, to get on the line to answer our nation's call to service. So again, find ways to invest. The other thing that I would challenge all of you to do is to understand that our nation was founded upon many differences. And as I sat up here and listened to the bills that you all had passed and the legislation that you all were doing, I thought, oh, this kind of sounds familiar. It's a deliberate political process in which we won't all agree on everything. I think the stat you gave said 70-some% had agreed. It wasn't 100. Rarely do we have 100% agreement in anything that we do. But if you guys can take the time to focus on the things that unite us instead of the things that divide us, and take the things that unite us and use those as your building block to build upon, our nation's going to be in great hands. And if you can understand that this experiment of life that we're on is one that can stand the generational test of time, when you and I understand that this isn't about you and me, it's about us as a nation. It's about the people that disagree with you and those that agree with you. It's about the people that look like you and don't look like you. So find ways to have those conversations. And lastly, I want to challenge you all to lead with integrity, to listen and to learn, and be engaged in your community. Again, there was another challenge that was issued from this podium tonight. I heard it myself. And I think the gentleman was actually from Kentucky. That gentleman, Mr. President, was the gentleman that was speaking here from Kentucky? Well, the business is in Kentucky, and he's here in Ohio talking about how we need to continue to invest in Boise State here in Ohio. Not in Kentucky where his business is, but here in Ohio. So take him up on that challenge. Find 5 or 6 young men that can come here next year, that can learn the things that you all have learned, that can find ways to invest in their communities. So when they get back home, our nation will continue to be united and not divided, and we can have an eye toward the future. So God bless each and every one of you. Thanks for allowing me just to spend a few minutes with you all. And one more loud, jubilant cheer higher than Girls State, because she did a whisper in my ear up here. She goes, well, it really wasn't that much louder than Girls State and Bowling Green when they just stood up. So on your feet, and let's give it up for Boise State. Thank you all. Be safe headed home tonight.